Some people live to test your patience, to see if they can push you to lose control. That's their game, and they think that if you show anger, they've won. But here's the truth. When you lose your cool, you hand over the power to them. True strength lies in maintaining your composure and responding with sharpness. So don't let them drag you into their emotional battle. The unexpected is your most powerful weapon. No yelling, no outbursts, just calm, calculated words that leave them speechless and make them realize they were wrong. In this video, I'll reveal powerful comebacks, responses that immediately shut down rudeness. Use them, and you'll never feel disrespected or insulted again. And remember, if you found value in this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share so others can learn these smart ways to handle disrespect. Number 1, you have the right to your opinion, and I have the right to ignore it. It sounds simple, but this is one of the most powerful responses you can have in your arsenal. People who thrive on negativity often believe that their words hold weight, that their opinions should dictate your emotions, your choices, and even your sense of self-worth. But the moment you refuse to argue, refuse to explain yourself, and simply dismiss their control over you, you take away their greatest weapon, the ability to manipulate your reaction. A real-life lesson in mastering composure. I remember the first time I used this phrase. I had been working on an important project for weeks, pouring in time, effort, and late nights. Then an old acquaintance heard about it and scoffed. With a smirk, he said, "You're wasting your time. Who even cares about this?" The old me might have engaged, defending my work, explaining my vision, trying to convince him of the value of my project. I might have felt the need to prove something, but instead I simply smiled and said, "You have the right to your opinion, and I have the right to ignore it." What happened next? Silence. Nothing frustrates an arrogant person more than being denied the argument they're looking for. They want a reaction. They want to feel important. But when you refuse to engage, you rob them of that satisfaction. Why this works in any situation? This response is not just about shutting down negativity, it's about setting boundaries. It's about protecting your mental energy from being wasted on people whose opinions add no real value to your life. Think about how this applies in everyday situations. A coworker constantly criticizes your work. You have the right to your opinion, and I have the right to ignore it. A family member makes unnecessary remarks about your lifestyle choices. You have the right to your opinion, and I have the right to ignore it. Someone online leaves a nasty comment. You have the right to your opinion, and I have the right to ignore it. When you master this mindset, you become unshakable. You stop feeling the need to prove yourself to people who aren't even worth the effort. And most importantly, you reclaim control over your emotions, your time, and your peace of mind. Number 2, if I had $1 for every smart thing you said, I'd be broke. Some people love to hear themselves talk. They criticize, mock, and dismiss others with sarcastic remarks, yet rarely offer anything of real value. These people believe that by tearing others down, they appear smarter. But in reality, all they're doing is exposing their own lack of depth. That's where this phrase comes in: simple, sharp, and knee. At first, it sounds like a joke, but the underlying meaning is brutal. You never say anything intelligent. And the best part? It forces the other person into a trap. If they get angry, they're proving your point. If they try to argue, they're admitting they've been exposed. Either way, they lose. This response isn't about being rude. It's about holding up a mirror and letting them see what they really sound like. I remember using this phrase on a former coworker who had a habit of tearing people down with passive-aggressive comments. He never contributed solutions, only sarcastic jabs designed to make others feel small. One day during a team meeting, I presented a new idea I had been working on. Before I could even finish, he smirked and said, "Oh, because you're a genius, right?" In the past, I might have felt the need to explain myself, to justify my idea, or even laugh it off. But instead, I simply smiled and replied, "If I had $1 for every smart thing you said, I'd still be broke." The room fell silent, then a chuckle, then another. Before long, the entire team was laughing, except for him. He sat there stunned, with nothing to say. And that was the point. For once, he was forced to think before he spoke. Why does this response work so well? Because it flips the script. Instead of engaging in a pointless argument or trying to justify yourself, you shift the burden onto them. They are the ones left scrambling for a comeback, not you. It also highlights a harsh truth. Many people criticize without contributing anything useful. They speak a lot, but say very little. And when you hold up a mirror to that reality, it forces them to reconsider their approach. At the end of the day, your time and energy are valuable. You don't owe a response to every sarcastic remark or baseless criticism. Instead of arguing, let them sit in the silence of their own emptiness. And if they insist on talking, well, at least now they know their words aren't worth much. Number 3, I don't argue with people who treat disrespect as a habit. Some people argue not to exchange ideas, but to assert dominance. They don't seek truth, resolution, or understanding. They seek conflict. These people are habitual provocateurs, always looking for a reaction. They insult, mock, and manipulate to push you into defending yourself. But here's the catch. The moment you start defending yourself, they've already won. The best way? Refuse to engage. Years ago, I was at a family gathering when my uncle, who always had something sarcastic to say, decided I was his target for the evening. I had just started my own business, and as soon as he found out, he smirked and said loudly so the whole table could hear, "Oh, great, another entrepreneur. Let me guess, you're going to make millions while working from your couch in pajamas?" A few people chuckled, waiting for me to defend myself. In the past, I might have. I might have explained my business model, talked about my hard work, or even fired back with a sarcastic remark of my own. But I didn't. Instead, I took a sip of my drink, looked at him, and said calmly, "I don't argue with people who treat disrespect as a habit." Then I turned back to my conversation as if his words meant nothing. The room fell silent for a moment. Then someone changed the subject, and the gathering moved on. But my uncle? He sat there, visibly uncomfortable. He had expected a fight, a debate, some sort of reaction. But when I didn't give him that satisfaction, he had nothing left to say. When someone disrespects you, they expect you to fight back. They want to get under your skin. But when you stay calm, when you make it clear that their behavior doesn't even deserve a response, you strip them of their power. They're left standing in their own negativity, looking foolish. This response works in many situations, whether it's a rude coworker, a family member who always has a snide remark, or even a stranger trying to provoke you. It sends a clear message. I have better things to do than engage with someone who lacks basic respect. Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every insult deserves a response. Real strength isn't in proving yourself to others. It's in knowing when to walk away. So the next time someone tries to bait you into a pointless argument, remember, you don't have to play their game. And when you don't, you always win. Number 4, that attitude won't take you far in life. Many people mistake rudeness for strength. They believe that by belittling others, they elevate themselves. They think that sarcasm, condescension, and a sharp tongue make them powerful. But in reality, these behaviors do the exact opposite. They limit opportunities, destroy relationships, and push success further out of reach. No one wants to work with, promote, or support someone who lacks basic respect. And sometimes all it takes is one simple sentence to make them realize it. That attitude won't take you far in life. I once worked with someone who had a habit of treating people like they were beneath him. He would roll his eyes at ideas he didn't like, interrupt others mid-sentence, and make snide remarks about coworkers when he thought no one was listening. One day during a team meeting, a younger colleague shared an idea, a fresh, creative solution to a problem we'd been struggling with for weeks. Instead of engaging with it, this guy smirked and said, "Wow, that's adorable. Let the adults handle it, kid." You could feel the tension in the room. The younger colleague looked embarrassed, but before he could say anything, I spoke up. I looked at the guy and said calmly but firmly, "That attitude won't take you far in life." Then I turned my attention back to the conversation, as if he wasn't even important enough to argue with. At first he scoffed, but for the rest of the meeting he stayed noticeably quieter. And guess what? Months later, when a leadership position opened up, he was overlooked. The person who got promoted? The same young colleague he had mocked. No one wants to work with someone who tears others down. People remember how you treat them, and when it comes time for big opportunities, they'll choose someone who lifts others up, not someone who drags them down. The lesson is simple. Arrogance doesn't lead to power. Disrespect doesn't lead to influence. And a bad attitude will close more doors than it opens. The next time you encounter someone who thinks their rudeness makes them superior, remind them they're not rising, they're sinking, and soon they'll be the only ones left at the bottom. Number 5. This conversation ended before it even began. This isn't just a response, it's a checkmate move. It sends a crystal clear message. I am not here to argue with you, and I refuse to play your game. Rude people thrive on conflict. They get energy from provoking others, from watching frustration build, from seeing someone lose their composure. But what happens when you don't give them the reaction they crave? They are left standing there, powerless, deflated, and, most importantly, ignored. Years ago, I attended a neighborhood meeting in my town. It was meant to be a constructive discussion about improving community spaces. But there was always one guy, let's call him Frank, who showed up just to be a contrarian. He wasn't there to contribute. He was there to tear down ideas, criticize others, and make sure his voice was the loudest in the room. That night, I proposed a new initiative to build a community garden. Before I could even finish my sentence, Frank leaned back in his chair, rolled his eyes, and smirked. "Oh, great! Another genius idea. I can't wait to hear how this one's going to fail." In the past, I might have defended my idea, explained why it was practical, or even matched his sarcasm, but not this time. I simply met his gaze and said, "This conversation ended before it even began." Then I turned my attention back to the discussion and continued as if his comment never happened. The room went silent for a moment. Frank opened his mouth to say something, but then closed it. He was completely thrown off. Without conflict, without an argument to fuel him, he had nothing. He had walked into that meeting expecting an easy fight. But instead, I had pulled the rug out from under him. And the best part? The conversation moved on without him. We got back to the real discussion, and for the first time, Frank wasn't the center of attention. Why this response works: 1. It cuts the conflict at the root. If you don't engage, they have nothing to fight against. 2. It shows composure and confidence. People who can't be rattled are the ones who truly hold the power. 3. It shifts control back to you. You decide which conversations are worth having. Since that day, Frank stopped trying to get a rise out of me. He realized I wouldn't waste my time playing his game. And soon he stopped showing up altogether. Some battles are won not by fighting, but by refusing to fight at all. Number 6. Thanks for your opinion. I'll forget it immediately. This isn't just a comeback. It's a verbal checkmate. It sends a clear message. I acknowledge your words, but I couldn't care less. And that's exactly what makes this response so hilariously brutal to people who thrive on judgment. These folks think their opinions are somehow life-altering, that they have the power to shake your confidence with a single comment. But when you casually dismiss them with this line, you're doing something powerful. You strip them of their imaginary authority and remind them that, in the grand scheme of your life, they rank somewhere between background noise and an unimportant email from your internet provider. Let me introduce you to David, a guy who had an opinion about everything but contributed nothing. He was the type of person who would critique a Michelin star meal while heating up frozen pizza at home. One day I was excitedly sharing details about a personal project at a gathering. Before I could even finish, David smirked and said, "Oh, wow, you really think that's going to work?" Sounds more like a comedy skit than an actual project. Now, in the past, I might have felt the need to defend my idea, maybe even argue a little. But that day, I just smiled, looked him dead in the eye and said, "Thanks for your opinion. I'll forget it immediately." Then, without missing a beat, I turned to continue my conversation with someone else, completely erasing David from my reality like a poorly written side character in a TV show. For a brief, glorious moment, the room went silent. David just sat there, blinking, processing his sudden irrelevance in real time. He had expected a reaction: anger, frustration, anything to keep his judgmental little game going. Instead, he got nothing. He was metaphorically vaporized from the conversation. And that, my friends, is how you win without even fighting. Why this comeback is perfect one. It deflates egos instantly. Judgmental people expect you to care. This tells them you don't. 2. It's savage but polite. You don't need to yell or be aggressive, yet it cuts deeper than any insult. 3. It puts you in control. Instead of being pulled into a pointless argument, you decide the conversation is over. Since that day, David never tried undermining me again. Maybe he realized that in my world, his opinions had the same weight as an expired coupon. Completely useless. Number 7. You seem really dedicated to making a fool of yourself. Some people just can't help themselves. Being rude is their default setting, their personality trait, their life's work. But the funniest part? They're usually the last person to realize that they're embarrassing themselves. That's why this phrase is pure gold. It flips the situation around and makes them pause for a second. Wait, am I the joke here? Spoiler alert, yes. Yes, they are. A real-life story. When public tantrums backfire. One morning, I was standing in line at my favorite coffee shop, patiently waiting for my turn, when a man ahead of me got mad because the barista was taking too long. He huffed and puffed and slammed his fist down on the counter dramatically, as if he were about to file a formal complaint with the federal government. Unbelievable! How hard is it to make a simple coffee? Do I have to come back there and do it myself? He barked, making sure the entire cafe could hear his righteous suffering. Now the old me might have just rolled my eyes and ignored it. But that day, I felt inspired, so I took a small step forward, looked at him with a completely neutral face and said, "Wow, you seem really dedicated to making a fool of yourself. Please continue. We're all watching." And oh, the silence that followed. For a split second, the man just stood there, blinking as if his brain had to do a quick reboot. He looked around, suddenly realizing that every single person in that cafe was either smirking or barely holding in their laughter. His face turned about 3 shades of red, and without another word, he grabbed his coffee and practically sprinted out the door. Mission accomplished. Why this line works so well. 1, it makes them question their own behavior. Nobody wants to be the main character of a public meltdown. 2, it's not aggressive, but it's devastating. You don't need to yell or insult. You simply state what's already happening. 3, it puts you in control. Instead of feeling powerless against their rudeness, you effortlessly shift the spotlight back on them. Since that day, I've kept this phrase in my verbal arsenal, ready to deploy whenever someone decides that the whole world needs to witness their personal Broadway performance of entitled and outraged. Rude people are an inevitable part of life. They could be co-workers, friends, family members, or even complete strangers we encounter on the street. However, we cannot control their behavior. The only thing we can control is how we respond. Dealing with rude individuals isn't about insulting them back. It's about maintaining respect for ourselves. You don't need to argue, raise your voice, or even give them the time of day. In truth, disrespect only affects you if you allow it to disturb your peace. But when you remain calm, respond with composure, and walk away as if their words mean nothing, it is they who will feel hurt. They will realize that they wasted their energy trying to bring you down, only to embarrass themselves in the process. So whenever someone disrespects you, remember, checkmark. Don't argue with those who aren't worth your time. Don't let meaningless words disturb your peace. You don't need to win an argument, just maintain your dignity. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have the power not to be harmed by what others do. Make your calmness your strongest weapon. And next time you encounter a rude person, remember, you don't need to retaliate. You just need to hold your ground." If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to spread these positive messages to more people. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll continue to join us for more videos in the future.